Mamar itself, we're still in Ois Tezvav, with the Mamar Topshin Dalad, which begins with Ani Nasati Lecha. So, middle of the page, and this is where he begins to explain the brachas of the Shemona Esrei, our requests. And we left off last week that the first request of all requests is that Hashem should give me the intelligence and the understanding what to request. In other words, it's an opportunity that I'm standing Shemona Esrei. I'm standing in front of the Melech Malchei Amlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I have the opportunity to ask for whatever my needs are. But nevertheless, I need a bracha. Hashem should bless me, that I should have the wisdom to ask for those things which are really important. So that's the first bracha. And what is it? To realize that the real bracha that I need is beruchni, because everything that's lacking gashmius is a result of something lacking in beruchnius. This is the basis for when people would write to the Rebbe about a certain problem. The Rebbe would tell them, check your tefillin, check your mezuzahs, check how kashrus. Naturally, it wasn't the same answer for every person because every situation is different. But the Rebbe has the ability to see what we don't see, to see what's the connection between what this person is suffering from and what they're lacking, and what it is that they're lacking beruchnis. But the general principle is the same with everything, that whatever we're lacking begashmius is a result because there's something lacking beruchnius. Just heard a story yesterday. It reminded me, I did hear the story a while back from the person who was actually in his house, that he was called into to a house where they needed a minyan. Unfortunately, somebody was sitting shiva, and they needed a minyan. They called him in, and he sees on the wall two pictures, one next to each other. Thank you very much. One was a picture of the Rebbe, and the other was a picture of Baba Sali. Baba Sali was one of the greatest leaders in the Sephardic world. He was from Morocco. Later, he lived in Israel. But these were the two pictures there, and he had no clue that this person had any connection to Lubavitch. So he asked them, how come you have these two pictures? He had no clue he had a connection to Baba Sali either. But anyway, he told him that for many years they were married, they had no children. And he wrote to the Rebbe, who was a religious man, and he wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered him that he should go over more carefully the laws of family purity. And he was very puzzled because he's a religious Jew, he knows the laws, he hears the laws. In fact, he teaches it to others. So he came to the conclusion that probably the Rebbe can't read all the letters himself. He gets hundreds of letters from people. So probably has secretaries that read the letters first. And they have standard answers for people. If people write that there's a problem in their marriage, the standard answer is be careful with family purity. If they write that there was a break-in in the house, the standard answer is check the mezuzah. If they write something they don't feel good in their body, their stomach, the Rebbe will say kashrus. So probably the secretaries opened it up and they saw this is a standard question. They gave the standard answer, but really it's not relevant to him. So he dismissed it. And 5 years later, he still had no children, and he traveled to Israel. And he decided when he goes to Israel, he's going to go to all the tzaddikim there to ask for a bracha, and go to all the burial places of tzaddikim. Like he'll get every bracha that he can possibly get in the whole country. His first stop was by Baba Sali, and he asked him for a bracha. So he said to him, "You already was by someone. Why don't you do what he told you to do?" This is 5 years later. He totally forgot that he even ever wrote to the Rebbe. And he said, "No, you're the first person I went to. I didn't go to anyone else yet." He tells him again, "No, you were by someone, and you didn't listen to why didn't you listen to what he told you to do?" After a few moments, he realized maybe that's what he's referring to. He told him, "The only one that I remember was I wrote." So he says, "Yes, why don't you listen to what he told you to do? Listen to what he told you to do, you will have the bracha." And this person says that Sali told him, "I meet with the Rebbe every night." Even though he lived in Israel. And this is what you need to do. Anyway, he was shocked. I think he cut his trip short. He went back to America. And after that, he had not just one child, he had children. So that's why you have these two pictures hanging in the house, the Rebbe and Baba Sali. So it's not a standard answer. The Rebbe is the one who can see more of the connection. But the general idea applies to all of us in all situations, that what's lacking Begashmis is what's lacking Baruchnis. So that's the general Bakosha. We're asking Hashem, we should have that recognition, and therefore we'll approach everything properly. Then you go on to the next bracha, which is, you come to tshuva. The second bracha is asking Hashem, the bakoshas. So we're starting with the line that begins with the word Asher. Asher Yediyah V'Akorazu. Once I recognize this, that whatever's lacking with Gashmis is because there's a lack Baruchnius. The Dakas are, even if I'm not doing something outright black and white against Torah, but maybe on a smaller scale, on a more refined level, there's something that could be improved. Like we said the other day, I could fine-tune my spirituality. So then, from that, tshuva. That's why the next bracha is tshuva. She bracha shniya. What does it mean? What could you ask for tshuva? Tshuva I have to do. What's the significance of asking Hashem for tshuva? We're asking Ezer, Hashem should assist us, Mumayla from above, Shetiya tshuva, tshuva amitis, that I can do through tshuva. Umakir b'chet, I should recognize what it is that's lacking. And then the next bracha is Mavakesh Slicha Mechila La'ovan. I'm asking Hashem to forgive me for whatever it was that I did wrong. And that's the third bracha. Then we come to the next bracha, is Bakoshes Geula. We're asking for redemption. And again, all these brachas, they have their simple meaning and they have their deeper meaning. So of course, we ask for redemption, means if I'm in any kind of crisis, any kind of distress, so I'm asking Hashem for redemption. But on a deeper level, that the godly soul, who is in a way held captive by the animal soul, that my godly soul has so much more potential, and the potential of the godly soul is not revealed completely because the animal soul is sort of dominating and doesn't allow the godly soul to express itself fully. So we ask a bracha that Hashem should help us. We should be able to be redeemed, free ourselves from the captivity of the animal soul. What's the next bracha? After that, we ask for healing. Again, of course, when we ask for healing, it has the literal meaning, but there's also the deeper meaning based on what he said. And why is that the next bracha? The Rapper says, Nafshel kiss, in order to heal the godly soul, even though the godly soul, I'm asking Hashem to free my godly soul, it shouldn't be held captive. And even if Hashem will fulfill that wish and it would be freed, I still need a bracha that the godly soul should be cleansed from all the diseases and all the negative things that got stuck to it while it was in Golus and Nefesh Bahamas. Like we hear now that, let's say, these people who unfortunately went through this horrific experience of being held hostage. So those who don't understand think, oh, they went out to freedom, now they're free. They're free physically, but there's so much more work that needs to be done, or the damage that was done while they were there, to be able to get back to be their regular self. So I'm asking Hashem for bracha that my nefesh kiss should also be cleansed from all the damage of the nefesh Bahamas. Then we come to the next bracha, Bakoshes Birchas Hashonim, asking Hashem for bracha for my panasa, which means that I go out into the field and I work, and I want Hashem to give a bracha that the field should give produce, we should have food. So this means both begashmias and also beruchnias, Torah v'avodah, that all the Torah that I study and all the spiritual work that I do with myself, with mitzvahs, we should see the fruits of our labor spiritually. B'sharei habrachas, this also applies to all the brachas that are in the Shemona Esrei, that even though they have their literal meaning, but they also are bakashas begili elikus. What I'm asking for on a deeper level is that godliness should be revealed, godliness should be manifesting in this world, b'nafshe ba'olam, in my soul and in the world, because it's all connected. That I have to reveal, I have to ask Hashem, the godliness should be revealed at a personal level. I should be more sensitive, I should be more aware, and then in the world at large, there should be a world where godliness is revealed and not concealed. Like days, through these prayers, through the davening, that'll help a person, that even those things that are very subtle, that they'll also be removed. Now explains another thing. So in the general, again, going back to what he said originally about the sword and the bow and arrow, that the Shemona Esrei, when we ask for these requests, in a sense, where the Shemona Esrei is, as far as davening is concerned, is considered halachically, as you know, the halachas, they're much more strict halachas that apply to Shemona Esrei than the Shema. In Shemona Esrei, you can't sit down, you can't communicate with another person, not only in speech, but even in other ways, with your hands or your eyes. In Shemona Esrei, you can't even interrupt to answer Amen from brachas, because Shemona Esrei is more like standing in front of Hashem himself, and therefore everything is so much more sensitive. And that's the time where I ask for all these requests, and that helps to be able to get rid of even those things that are on a subtle level, on a hidden level. They should also be removed and eliminated. We see an interesting thing, that after we finish Shemona Esrei, what goes next in the davening is Ashamnu. What's Ashamnu? Ashamnu is the confession. So we're asking Hashem for forgiveness. On the surface, this idea of the confession, the really they belong before the davening, not after. In other words, I'm going into Hashem and I'm going to ask him for my request. So before I go in, it makes sense. That's what I should be saying, Oshamnu Bagadnu, and basically do tshuva on everything that went wrong. And then I can go into Hashem and I'm cleansed. What place does it have to say Oshamnu Bagadnu after I finish Shemona Esrei and after I reach sort of the highest point of speaking to Hashem and being connected to Hashem? The answer is before davening, derech ish yosher be'eino. People look at themselves and they feel that everything is fine. He doesn't see that he did anything which is an avera. Adrabah, on the contrary, osa is a mitzvah. He sees, looks at himself and sees, I did a mitzvah here, I did a mitzvah there. Olam Torah, learning Torah. Nidmalai, it appears to him, that he's close to godliness. He doesn't feel that there's anything in him that's lacking spiritually. Namadei Tzir of the Tefillah, the through davening refines the person. There's a pasuk Shemitzaref with Kesef, like a refinery that you refine silver or gold. Silver and gold, these are things that they're in the ground, they're buried in the ground. And when you find them, and they're stuck together with earth. And the refinery is to separate the silver from the earth, separate the silver from the dirt. In a sense, that's what davening is. And because the pasuk says, "Mitzaref l'kesef ish lefi mahalolei," every person according to their praise. What does that mean? Hainu by hilul v'shvach v'tfilah. When a person praises Hashem in davening, shemavakesh kiras alikus, and he's looking and begging to become closer to Hashem, closer than he was. As I margish, then he feels as a sigin v'apsegler shabai. Then he feels, there's a word for it in English, I don't know if anyone knows, but when you find silver in the ground with the earth, that the earth that's stuck to the silver has a name. Anyone know? No. In Hebrew, it's called sigin. So he starts feeling that within himself. In other words, when he's just going on his merry way, doing his thing, he doesn't feel anything. But when he wants to make an attempt to come closer to Hashem, he feels there's something in him that's holding him back. He feels there's something that's in him that's not complete, that's not allowing him to feel God the way he would like to. I mean, there's many examples that I've given to this activity, but let's say, for example, what's the difference between things that we do on Shabbos or things that we do during the week? So if I take a pen and I write something during the week, fine. Not only it's fine, but I might take the pen and write something, a letter to a person, a letter that's going to be helping the person, encouraging the person. I'm writing out a check to give tzedakah. Not only fine, it's a mitzvah, it's beautiful. But if I do the same thing on Shabbos, it's an avera. How can it be that the same exact act? If I do it on Wednesday, it's a mitzvah. If I do it on Shabbos, it's an avera. So the answer is, because Shabbos is a holy day, it's a Kedusha day, today where godliness is more revealed. So therefore, even though generally speaking, writing out something on a piece of paper is fine, but in the presence of such holiness, it's inappropriate. It's like a person who would stand in front of a king and then remind himself, yeah, I want to give tzedakah to somebody, and tell the king, just 1 second, pull out my checkbook, I'm going to write out a check. In front of a king, you have to be totally focused. So when I'm davening Shemon Esrei, or in this case, if it's Shabbos, I will focus on Hashem. It's so much stronger, so much greater. For Shabbos, Hashem is more revealed in the world. Well, let's say in the Beis Hamikdash, there are a lot of laws regarding the Beis Hamikdash that if a person touched a dead body or the other thing that made them impure, they're not allowed to enter the Beis Hamikdash. They can go anywhere else. They're allowed to daven. They can do whatever, put on tefillin, daven. But in the Beis Hamikdash, because it's a higher level of holiness, this is an interference. And sometimes they give a motion of a garment, that if you have a stain on a garment, on a regular garment, you might not even notice it. But if the garment is like pure white, you'll notice a little tiny stain. Otherwise, the tiny stain is not even noticeable. In other words, in a regular garment, this stain is not an interference. But in a pure white garment, you'll notice that it's an interference. So in a regular situation, whatever it is not necessarily interference. But if it's a higher level, like Shabbos or the Beis Hamikdash, or like I said before, standing Shemona Esrei, standing in front of the Melech, even that is considered an interference. Imagine a person makes a bracha, and I'm davening Shemona Esrei. I'm not allowed to interrupt to say Amen on a bracha. Amen on a bracha is an amazing thing. There's so many amazing things written about what happens when you say Amen. But if you're standing Shemona Esrei, which means you're standing in front of Hashem, that saying Amen would be an interruption, would be an interference in my respect to the Melech. So the same thing on a personal level. After we daven the whole davening, And then we come to Shmona Esrei, which is the highest point in davening, and that's the point where we start, where we rise to a higher level. Then we feel how certain things in me are an interference. But when I'm doing my regular activity, I don't feel that it's not an interference. So that's why after Shmona Esrei, that's when we say Shamanu Bagadlu. Let's see the words inside. When I do the first part of davening, or Krishna, even when I'm reading the Shema, because it's a lower level on the ladder, you know, the davening is represented by the ladder. This week's parsha, Yaakov had a dream, and he saw a ladder, and the ladder had 4 rungs. What are the 4 rungs? So there's about who knows, 100 different interpretations. But this wasn't just a dream; it was a prophecy, prophetic vision. But the Zohar says that the ladder represents tefillah, davening. And why does it have 4 rungs? Because the davening is broken up into 4 parts. The first part of davening is from Baruch Shamar until Yishtabach. The second part of davening is from Yishtabach until Shema. The third part of davening is from the Shema until Shmona Esrei. And the Shmona Esrei is the 4th part of davening. So it's like a ladder. We're climbing, we're getting closer to Hashem. Shmona Esrei is being all the way on top of the ladder. When you get all the way on top of the ladder, that's when you feel it. I don't know if this would be a good marshal, but I think it's also the same thing. A person is doing mountain climbing. If there's something in your health that's not so perfect, and you go up in a very high mountain, the person is not going to feel well. Why? There's something with their heart, with their lungs. So how come they didn't feel it when they were climbing on the little mountains? Because they're little mountains, you don't feel it. When you're climbing up higher, that's when you feel. Even though whatever problem there is, whatever is lacking all the time, but you don't feel it. It doesn't interfere. Only when you're climbing higher. So when you get to Shmona Esrei, that's when we feel this. Because in connection to the lower levels, master. These fine things that we're talking about, the things that are internal, that are on a final level, internal, that's negative. It's not outright negativity, but on a final level, it only interferes with Rabbi Majeski for the higher levels. That's when the more refined, more subtle negativity gets in the way. Only once he comes to Shmona Esrei. What's Shmona Esrei? So the himself. Here's where he wants to become very close to Ein Sof, Shein Arech Elov, to Hashem, who is infinitely higher than himself. As I margish, that's when he feels Gam b'dakas harashabai, Mismara ma'oid, and there he feels bad about it. The fact that he feels bad about it helps him overcome it, and he's able to erase and clean out even those things. That's why the Vidu said after Shmona Esrei, that's pushing away even the finer things. So let's remember that when we talk about finer negativity, every person on their level, it's not the same for everyone, but in every person's life and every person's journey, wherever they're at, there's those things that where I'm holding, this is considered gasusara, this is sort of black and white negativity, and the other is more subtle, where in ordinary circumstances I might not feel it, but when I really want to move forward and get closer to Hashem, I'm going to feel that something in there is holding me back. I have to get rid of the something, and then I can move forward and go higher. Well, this explains why Shema is compared to the bow, because rather to the sword, because Shema is getting rid of the gasus hara, but Shmona Esrei is the bow and arrow, where you reach the enemy that's far, meaning we reach the negativity that's far, that's hard to recognize and hard to see. So let's stick to our word, and we're going to go straight to the workbook, and we'll go over the terms in this workbook and the questions on this chapter. Okay. I know we just learned it, but let's just go over it together and give a chance for you to write it in. So in your free time, when you're sitting down and relaxing and reviewing the mind, you'll be able to read it all over again. Yeah.
You can walk up for a moment, so the only essay compares to the going now where the enemy part of it succeeds. But then we go into the concession after that. We start enemy that's even harder to succeed.
No, it means that during the Shemoneh Esrei, I become aware of those things. Then after Shemoneh Esrei, we're asking Hashem to wipe away those things. I don't know if you study in the Pasha, if you study the Haftorah, but recently we had a Haftorah, which was a story with a woman who had no children, and there was a Navi, there was a prophet, his name was Elisha. He used to travel, and when he traveled past their house, he would stay by them. And because of that, they went and they built, from the attic, they built an apartment for him. And when he came, he has his own apartment, his own bed, his own table, his own chair, his own lamp, and he was very thankful. And then he gave her a bracha for a child, and the child was born. And then a while later, the child got sick. He was very young. And she came running to the Navi and said, "You promised me a child. Look what happened." And he came back, and he brought the child back to life. Remember the story? You read it, it's Parshas Chayesora. So one of the things in the story is where she said that because of you, this happened to me. What does that mean? In other words, Rashi says this, that up until now, in heaven, when they sort of looked at me, they measured me according to the people that live near me. And according to the people who live me, I was at a certain spiritual place. Now that you came here, in your presence, I'm much less than what I appear to be much less, because compared to you, what I've accomplished doesn't come close. And maybe that's why it happened. In other words, when you're doing Shemoneh Esrei and you're approaching higher levels of connection to Hashem, then we start feeling things that are not appropriate, not perfectly in place. Okay, so the first question is, why is the first request in Shemoneh Esrei for wisdom?
So that we know what to ask for.
Right. And what do we have to know what to ask for?
You know, ask for the looking of things.
Right, to understand that whatever's lacking B'Gashmi is a result of what's lacking Ruchnis. Okay, how would you put down in brief words, what is the difference spiritually between a sword and a bow? Keshev and a cherev, a sword and a bow. Right, and spiritually, it means number 3. With the sword, we can reach Gasasara, and with the bow, we can reach Dakasara. But what is the difference? How would you define the difference in simple words? I would write Dasara means coarse negativity, and Dakasara means more refined, more subtle negativity. Now, based on this, what we just did now is the answers to 4, 5, and 6. What is the spiritual meaning of the bracha Geula? It means, on a personal level, Hashem should redeem and free my Nefesh Elokis from captivity from the Nefesh HaBahamis. What is the spiritual meaning of the bracha Refuah? It means that Hashem should heal my Nefesh Elokis from whatever needs to be healed from, even if it's redeemed and even if it's freed, but there's so much negativity that sort of got stuck to it, and we need to get it out. The Hasidic Rebbe wants to ask the question. It says that the Jews went out of Egypt in the blink of an eye. The moment the time came, In a blink of an eye, Hashem took them out. And then they spent 40 years in the desert before they went into Israel. How come? So he said to take the Jews out of Egypt, it takes a blink of an eye. To take Egypt out of the people, that took 40 years. So basically, once a person is held captive, to take that out of the person, that's another you need another bracha for that. That's refuah. What is the spiritual meaning of the bracha Mevorach Hashanim? That the field should be blessed. I mean, the word literally means Mevorach Hashanim of the year, but it means the field that grows throughout the year, throughout all the seasons, should be blessed. It means the produce Bekashmias, and also means the produce Beruchnius, the learning, the davening, that it should all be with success. Number 7, so all these questions really are what we just finished today more than everything. Why do we say Hashavnu after Shmon Esrei? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to say it before Shmon Esrei? So the answer is because the Hashavnu is only after we become aware of the Dakas Hara. And when do we become aware of Dakas Hara? Only when we climb to the top of the mountain. So, what are the main points in this chapter? I would say the main point of the chapter is to explain the difference between Dakas Hara and Gasas Hara, between the bow and arrow and the sword. In fact, in the next chapter, he's going to bring that from the Gemara. It says that, generally speaking, even though there are many different kinds of weapons, and today certainly we have all different strange weapons that never existed before, but they all fall under 5 categories of weapons. And he's going to explain how all these weapons are in davening. Davening is war, and there's 5 weapons. That's going to be the next chapter. So this chapter explains the bow and arrow and the sword. And the next chapter will explain other things. And let's go to the first page, which has the terms. We started, but we didn't finish. Mumka Daliba means the depth of the heart. Hitzainim, you wrote that down, what it is? There's another word for klipa. Then number 3 and 4 is Dakas Hara, Gasas Hara. Number 5 is a term that's found very often, and it means from one descent to another descent. One of the points he brought out is that some of these things which are subtle, because they're so subtle, I'm not aware of it, and therefore, slowly, without even realizing it, it could lead me to go down, from one down to another down to another down. We'll get to a place with very difficult even to correct. Just like Begashmis, that Chas v'Sholem, there are certain things that could be in the body that I don't feel any pain, I don't feel anything different, but it's there and it's doing its thing, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And only when it gets to a place where Chas v'Sholem, it's really severe, does the person realize that they have the problem, and it's so much harder to repair it at that point. So again, and you talk a lot to forget the main point. The main point in the definition would be Dechi al Dechi, means from descent to descent. Kal Shabakalim. Yeah, this you have in Tanya in numerous places. Kal Shabakalim. What?
Like a simple.
So the truth, the simple Jew would be more ish pashut. That means a simple Jew. Kal Shabakalim is lower than that. Kal Shabakalim means, the word kal in Hebrew means light. He's light-headed or light-hearted towards mitzvahs. Like, if he does something wrong, good go. If I didn't do what I had to do, good go. And he's light about it. And Kal Shebekala means he's super light. Once a chassid, was very closely connected to the Rebbe Rashab's home. He was actually a secretary, but he was also almost like a family member, even though he wasn't. So he came around the house a lot. And one time he was speaking to the Rebbetzin and the Rebbe Rashab, And he sat down on a chair. So Rebbe said, please don't sit on that chair. It's very, very weak. It's shaky. It's okay. I'm a Kal Shabbakalin. I'm very light, so I won't bring it down. Number 7, Krirus. What's Krirus? Cold. What does that mean? How does cold fit into a minor? I mean, if I have a cold, it means you're eating something, ice cream, that's cold. It means the weather is cold. So what's the cold? That you're observing mitzvahs, you're learning Torah, but it's done without any passion. Right, it's no heat, no fire, no passion. And that's the coldness. We'll learn about this later. This is called Amalek in Chassidus. And even though I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm doing all the right thing, but it's not just coldness. Eventually, it could lead a person to not doing it at all. Okay. We're ready to turn the page. At least start the second chapter. This is chapter 10, 16. The Muhammad Zuharuchni is in this spiritual war. Live cases to push away the negative things. So the Hachris is unique and to cut off the nurturing of the klipa. And we know that klipa nurtures from us by doing Avera. Yesh b'derech prat. More specifically, there are Chamisha Klei Zayin, 5 weapons. Hamanuyin b'Mishnah Dalet Perek Lov the Shabbos. There's a Mishnah in the tractate of Shabbos that talks about laws of Shabbos. And one of the laws of Shabbos is you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos. Are you allowed to carry weapons on Shabbos? So, okay. So then the question is, what do you need it for? Is there a danger? Is there not a danger? Do you need it just to make sure there won't be a danger? But the original place where this is discussed is in a Mishnah in Gemara Shabbos. But the Mishnah mentions 5 different kinds of weapons. Now, even though it's only 5, but as like everything else in Torah, the Torah gives 5. That means that they represent 5 categories of weapons. They could be different forms and different shapes and different things. I'll give you an example. One of them is one of them that if you go out to war with is let's read the word. Sayif is a sword. Keshes is a bow and arrow. Tris is a shield. Allah is a stick. Remach is a spear. So today, when they go out to war, soldiers don't have a shield on their head. But if you have something like that blocks a missile, that's the same idea as a shield. And the same thing with arrows. We don't have arrows today, but we have things that are called arrows because they do the same thing. They fly hundreds of miles, but so there's 5 categories of weapons, and he's going to explain what these weapons are. Baruchnis. So pretty much he explained the sword and the bow. Now he's going to explain the club, the stick. What kind of weapon is that, and how does it apply to the Yetzer Hara? Okay, next time you go davening, you have a sword, and you have a bow and arrow, and you have a shield, and you have a stick. You don't get into a fight with anybody. Okay, only for the Yetzer Hara. To be continued. Okay. Thank you.
Not the points. Yeah. What did you? Wait for your iron. Iron. I was like, oh, yes. Terrible. And I almost. We are. Oh, what you guys see? I don't know, like already. You don't have to make it for some, but. Yeah. Probably touch it, yeah. Yeah. You're getting there. So bad. Having I want to see. The next one. That's so cute. Is it another? I wanted to go to the. I asked for a picture. Okay, I'll see you for this. Yeah. I think so. Yes, let me see if it doesn't want to go. You might get ladies. I watch. Yeah, I think I just continue. Now I had a home appreciate. That's great. You know, once it's so nice. That's right.